I just went through the UPSC Civil Services Examination GS Paper 2 Mains 2026, and I must say that I am pleasantly surprised. This year, the paper was largely on the predictable lines, unlike the last few years. If I look at the first question, right to privacy relating to self-identity is very dear to every human being, well protected in Article 21. They asked this question very similar to the question that they asked just a year back related to the DNA testing of a child in womb and right to privacy in that context. This year they have asked in context of the amendment that was made to the Transgenders Persons Act of 2019. The second question related to women reservation was again on the expected lines, but the question was not very straightforward because this question expected one to deal with how the Constitution of India looks at women as a different class altogether as compared to the backward classes, and how the reservations that have evolved with respect to women in legislatures have been due to the executive and the legislative intention. The third question was something which was expected this year because of the entire news around anti-defection and the role that is played by the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. There was previously also a question that had been asked by UPSC, once a speaker, always a speaker. Should we be adopting the similar kind of principle in India? They have ended up asking about the partisan role played by the Lok Sabha Speaker and what can be done in that. The next question, fourth question related to the right to vote as a fundamental right, had generated quite a bit of controversy in 2017 prelims. But this year, the question is more about the role of Election Commission of India in the revision of electoral rolls, as well as whether they can actually decide over the citizenship of a person or not. And this is a debate which had been covered in the newspapers really well. The next question, fifth question related to National Commission for Scheduled Tribes, was also something which UPSC has asked multiple times earlier. Reviewing the functioning of constitutional bodies which are involved in protection of the vulnerable sections of the society, and this year they have asked specifically as far as NCSC and NCST is concerned. The next question under governance was question number 8 related to the Indian civil services, and this is very common debate on the Indian civil services, that whether we should be having technical specialists in the civil services or whether the civil servants should be generalists in nature. This is a debate that we recurrently cover in all our mains classes related to governance. Question number 11 was again a very expected theme because of the reference that was made by the President to the Supreme Court with respect to assent to be given by the governor to a state legislature's bill, as well as the Tamil Nadu controversy, and they have asked about that whether this is a discretionary power of the governor and what are the other parts of the discretionary powers of the governors in India or not. Next question related to judicial legislation, again a repeat of something which UPSC has asked earlier, but this year they have related it to a current affairs event of passive euthanasia and living will, and therefore doing the same thing which they have been doing again and again, bring in a static concept, bring in a current affairs topic and combine both of them to ask a question. The question on asymmetric federalism and how India's federal model has been able to accommodate the diversities of India as a nation, again a very beautifully framed question, but something which could have been easily dealt with if you have been going through the themes related to federalism in the past and you've solved previous year questions. The next question related to comparing the position of the Prime Minister of India and that of the President of America was very interesting, because the first part of the question was relatively easy, but it's the second part of the question where the real problem lied, because you had to compare these powers of both of these functionaries across executive, legislative and some of the other areas as well, and that could have been a bit tricky. The next question related to the nexus between corporate wealth and political power was a tricky question because of the second part. The first part was easy, but the second part required one to talk about electoral bonds, post-retirement benefits for the retired civil servants, as well as the media and political nexus and the corporate nexus that exists in the country. And the last question related to polity and governance, question number 16th, which was about transparency and accountability, was not a very straightforward question because UPSC expected you to go beyond the usual debate around transparency and accountability related to corruption, but this time they wanted you to talk about how transparency and accountability also relates to creating trust between the citizens and the government. And this also draws from the second ARC report of how RTI is the master key to good governance. So overall, I would feel that this was a relatively easier paper, but of course, devil lies in detail, and it would require one to be able to write the answers in that limited amount of time, and that's where the real challenge lies. That too in a structured manner with the help of examples and evidence. I'll be doing a detailed analysis of this paper on my YouTube channel tomorrow. So do tune in and I'll see you there live. Thank you.